Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to Mystery Tales channel. I'm your host, Alexander Thorne, here to whisk you away into the shadowy world of intrigue and deduction. Tonight, we embark on a thrilling journey with the incomparable Hercule Poirot in our original story, The Fatal Pact of Baron Eldric. This is a long-form mystery in the timeless style of Agatha Christie, full of locked rooms, cunning suspects, and those little gray cells at work. Settle in with a cup of tea, dim the lights, and let's begin. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more relaxing tales of suspense. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Is it a cozy armchair in London? Or perhaps a rainy evening across the pond? Now, without further ado, Chapter 1, The Gathering Storm. In the autumn of 1927, the rolling hills of Sussex lay cloaked in a persistent mist, as if the very landscape conspired to guard its secrets. At the heart of this enigmatic countryside stood Eldric Manor, a sprawling estate of weathered stone and ivy-draped turrets, its silhouette both majestic and foreboding against the gray October sky. The manor, a relic of Tudor ambition expanded by Victorian wealth, was the seat of Baron Eldric Hawthorne, a man whose name evoked both awe and unease in London's high society. His fortune, built on the shipping empire of his late father, Sir Reginald Hawthorne, was vast, but so too were the whispers of his ruthlessness. Tales of broken rivals, betrayed confidants, and a peculiar obsession with ancient oaths that bordered on the occult. The Baron, a robust figure in his mid-50s, cut an imposing presence with his neatly trimmed mustache, piercing blue eyes, and a voice that could command a room or chill it to silence. His reputation was a tapestry of contradictions. A philanthropist who funded orphanages, yet a businessman who crushed competitors without mercy. A charming host who dazzled at galas, yet a recluse who spent hours in his study poring over arcane texts. It was said he turned heads in every ballroom from Mayfair to Belgravia. Her auburn hair, pinned in an elegant chignon, framed a face that could still inspire poetry. But her emerald eyes carried a weariness born of a marriage more contractual than affectionate. Victoria had been a debutante of modest means when Eldric, then a rising star in society, chose her to bolster his status. The years had not been kind. Rumors of his affairs and his iron grip on their finances had worn her spirit thin. She moved through the manor's grand halls with the grace of a caged bird, her smile polite, but her heart heavy with unspoken grievances. If one were to speculate on motives, hers might be liberation, and the vast inheritance that would secure it. Next came Reginald Hawthorne, the Baron's only son, a young man of 25 whose charm was matched only by his recklessness. Tall and broad-shouldered, with his father's blue eyes but none of his discipline, Reginald had squandered his allowance in the gambling dens of Soho and the racetracks of Ascot. His sleek motor car, a gleaming Bentley, was parked carelessly on the manor's gravel drive, a symbol of his extravagance. The Baron had grown increasingly vocal about his disappointment, threatening to disinherit Reginald in favor of a more worthy successor. Reginald's easy smile hid a simmering fury, and as he lounged in the drawing room, a cigarette dangling from his lips, one could sense a storm brewing beneath his polished exterior. Then there was Miss Eliza Thorne, the Baron's niece and ward, a woman of 28 whose sharp intellect and quiet defiance set her apart. Orphaned at 12 after her parents perished in a boating accident, A tragedy some whispered was no accident at all. Eliza had been raised at Eldric Manor under the Baron's strict guardianship. Her love of literature, particularly the works of Poe and Conan Doyle, had honed her mind. But her uncle's patriarchal control stifled her ambitions. With her dark hair and piercing gray eyes, Eliza carried herself with a poise that masked her resentment. She stood business partner in a lucrative import firm specializing in exotic goods. A wiry man of 45, Silas carried himself with the confidence of a duelist, a scar across his left cheek a memento of a youthful indiscretion. His dark eyes missed nothing, and his sharp tongue had made him both feared and respected in London's mercantile circles. Silas and the Baron had clashed recently over discrepancies in their accounts. Discrepancies Silas claimed were fabricated by Eldric to seize full control of the firm. Rumors of smuggled artifacts, hidden in crates marked as T, added a layer of intrigue to their strained partnership. As the guests gathered in the grand drawing room, its walls adorned with portraits of stern Hawthorne ancestors, a fire roared in the marble hearth, casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance with secrets. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood, beeswax candles, and the faint tang of the storm brewing outside. The butler, a stoic figure named Mr. Jenkins, served sherry with mechanical precision, his eyes betraying nothing of the conversations he overheard. At precisely 8 o'clock, Baron Eldric made his entrance, descending the oak staircase with the theatricality of a man who knew all eyes were upon him. He wore a tailored dinner jacket, his silver cufflinks glinting in the candlelight. "My dear friends and family," he began, his voice resonating like a cathedral bell. "You are here because you are bound to me, by blood, by debt, or by ambition. Tonight, we forge a pact, a fatal pact, that will determine the future of my empire. I have drafted a new will, to be revealed at midnight. Each of you has a stake, but secrets bind us. Swear now, on your honor, to abide by its terms, or face ruin." The room fell silent, the crackle of the fire the only sound as he produced a document, its pages heavy with portent. A small silver tray held a needle and an inkwell of crimson liquid. "Blood," the Baron explained, "to seal their oath." One by one they promised a week of fishing and pub lunches, far from the intrigues of London. But fate, as it so often did with Poirot, had other plans. A telegram from Scotland Yard was en route, and the little grey cells were about to be summoned to Eldric Manor. The stage was set, the players assembled, and the shadows of the manor whispered of secrets yet to be unveiled. What lay ahead was a puzzle wrapped in a storm, and only Poirot could unravel it. Chapter 2. The Sealed Chamber. The grand dining hall of Eldric Manor gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, their light refracting across polished silverware and delicate bone china. The dinner, though lavish, had been a strained affair, the clink of cutlery and the murmur of forced pleasantries punctuated by the relentless howl of the storm outside. The windows rattled as gusts of wind battered the manor, and the air within seemed to carry the weight of the fatal pact signed just hours before. The guests, Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Eliza Thorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood, sat around the mahogany table, their faces illuminated by candlelight that cast long, wavering shadows on the paneled walls. Baron Eldric, ever the commanding presence, had dominated the conversation with tales of his travels, from the spice markets of Bombay to the fog-choked docks of Shanghai. His stories, though enthralling, carried an edge, as if each anecdote was a veiled warning to his guests. "Loyalty," he said at one point, raising his glass of claret, "is the currency of empires. Betray it, and you bankrupt yourself." His piercing blue eyes lingered on each guest, and the room grew colder despite the roaring fire in the hearth. Lady Victoria, seated at the far end of the table, toyed with her food, her delicate fingers barely touching the roasted pheasant. Her smile was a practiced mask, but her eyes darted to the clock, which ticked toward 11. She murmured an excuse about a headache and rose, her silk gown rustling as she glided from the room. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, followed to ensure noticeable, and a faint sheen of sweat glistened on his brow, hinting at the opium that clouded his composure. Silas Blackwood, the Baron's business partner, excused himself briefly to take a telephone call in the hall, his sharp voice echoing faintly as he spoke to an associate in London. When he returned, his scar seemed more pronounced in the candlelight, and he paced by the tall windows, staring into the storm as if searching for answers in the swirling darkness. At 11:30, Baron Eldric rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "Enough of this," he declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I retire to my study to meditate on our pact. The will shall be revealed at midnight. Disturb me not." He strode from the room, his footsteps echoing up the grand staircase. The guests exchanged uneasy glances as the heavy oak door of his study slammed shut, followed by the unmistakable click of a lock, a German-made mechanism of his own design, said to be impenetrable. The study, located on the second floor, was a fortress within the manor. Its door was reinforced with iron bands, and its single window, a tall leaded pane overlooking the gardens, was secured with a latch only operable from within. The Baron had boasted of its security, a necessity, given the valuable artifacts and documents he kept inside, including the mysterious pact that now bound the guests. The key, a heavy brass piece, remained in his possession, and as the guests lingered in the corridor, they heard him turn it in the lock, sealing himself inside. The manor settled into an uneasy quiet, broken only by the storm's relentless assault. The guests dispersed, Victoria to her bedroom, Reginald to the billiard room, Eliza to the library, Harlan to the conservatory, and Silas to the smoking lounge. The servants moved silently, clearing the dining table and tending to their duties, their faces betraying no hint of the tension that gripped the household. Then, at precisely midnight, a scream shattered the silence, a raw, guttural cry that seemed to claw its way from the very walls. It came lock, but it wouldn't turn. The mechanism was jammed, or worse, locked from within. "It's no use," he cried, his voice cracking. Silas, his duelist's instincts kicking in, seized a crowbar from a nearby closet, used for prying open delivery crates. With a collective effort, he and Reginald forced the door, the wood splintering around the lock as it gave way. The sight within stopped them cold. Baron Eldric Hawthorne lay slumped over his mahogany desk, a dagger buried deep in his back. Blood pooled on the antique Persian rug, its crimson stark against the intricate patterns. The Pact document, still clutched in his hand, was smeared with blood, the signatures of the guests now a grim testament to their earlier oath. The room was sealed, the window latched tightly, its frame undisturbed, and the key lay on the floor beside the desk, glinting in the dim light of a single desk lamp. "Who could have done this?" Eliza gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes darted to the others, searching for guilt in their faces. Dr. Harlan Graves, his medical instincts overriding his shock, knelt beside the body. His trembling fingers checked for a pulse, then probed the wound. "Dead," he pronounced, his voice hoarse. "Stabbed through the heart. It was instantaneous. Within the last 10 minutes, I'd wager." He stood, wiping his hands on a handkerchief, his face ashen. Victoria swayed, clutching the door frame. "But how?" The door was locked, the window secured. No one could have entered. Silas, his scar twitching, examined the window. "No signs of tampering," he muttered. "And no footprints in the mud outside. Not in this storm." Reginald, his earlier bravado gone, stared at the dagger. "That's Father's own blade," he said, pointing to the ornate handle, part of a collection displayed on the study's wall. "How did it end up in his back?" Eliza's sharp mind was already at work. "A locked room," she murmured almost to herself. "Like something out of a novel. But how?" The servants, alerted by the commotion, gathered at the door. Anticipation. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "a locked room is never truly locked. It is merely a challenge to the little gray cells. This case, it intrigues Poirot." Back at the manor, the guests stood in the study, the weight of the Pact and the horror of the crime pressing down on them. The storm raged on, trapping them together, each wondering who among them had blood on their hands. Chapter 3. The Little Gray Cells Awaken. The storm over Eldric Manor showed no signs of abating as dawn broke on Saturday, October 15th, 1927. The Sussex hills were shrouded in a gray mist that clung to the estate like a mourner's veil, mirroring the pall that had settled over its inhabitants. The gruesome discovery of Baron Eldric Hawthorne's body, stabbed in a locked study with no apparent means of entry or exit, had left the guests in a state of shock and suspicion. The local constable, delayed by flooded roads, had yet to arrive, and the manor's telephone lines remained severed by the tempest. It was into this atmosphere of dread that Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his egg-shaped head and meticulously waxed mustache, stepped with characteristic precision. Poirot's motor car crunched to a stop on the gravel drive at 7:30, its engine sputtering in the drizzle. Captain Hastings, his loyal friend and chronicler, emerged first, umbrella in hand, his boyish face creased with concern. "Ghastly business, Poirot," he muttered, squinting at the manor's imposing facade. "A locked room murder, no less. Reminds me of that case in Styles, eh?" Poirot, adjusting his Homburg hat, gave a small smile. "Mon ami, every locked room is but a puzzle. And Poirot, he is the master of puzzles. The impossible is merely the improbable in disguise. Let us see what secrets this manor holds." His sharp green eyes scanned the ivy-clad walls, noting the shuttered windows and the faint glow of lamps within. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, summoned by the same urgent telegram, met them at the entrance, his overcoat damp and his expression grim. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," he said, frame from the forced entry. Inside, the study was a tableau of opulence and violence. Baron Eldric's body had been covered with a sheet, pending the constable's arrival, but the blood-stained rug and the dagger, still on the desk where it had been carefully placed by Dr. Graves, told a grim story. The room was as secure as described. The heavy oak door, its German lock now broken, bore no signs of tampering beyond the crowbar's work. The single window, tall and leaded, was latched firmly, its frame unmarred. Poirot paced the room, his polished shoes silent on the rug, his eyes darting from the desk to the walls, where a collection of antique daggers hung, one slot conspicuously empty. "This dagger," Poirot said, lifting it with a handkerchief. "It is one of the Baron's own, oui? From his collection?" Japp nodded. "Confirmed by the son, Reginald. No fingerprints but the Baron's, though. Wiped clean, likely." Poirot examined the blade, its ornate handle engraved with the hawthorn serpent crest. "Curieux. A weapon chosen for its symbolism, perhaps." He turned to the Pact document, still bloodied, and read its contents silently. The will, partially revealed, divided the Baron's estate unevenly. Eliza Thorne inherited a substantial trust fund. Reginald was all but disinherited. Lady Victoria received a modest stipend contingent on not remarrying. Dr. Graves's debts were forgiven, and Silas Blackwood was obligated to repay a large sum to retain his partnership share. "The Pact," Poirot mused. "It binds them all, yet it provokes. Let us meet these players in our little drama." The guests were summoned to the drawing room, where the fire had been stoked to ward off the morning chill. They sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of grief, fear, and suspicion. Poirot stood before them, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture impeccable. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "A crime most heinous has occurred. Baron Eldric is dead." Pulled back tightly, spoke with measured calm. "Uncle Eldric treated me like a child, but I had no reason to harm him. I inherit a trust fund now, yes, but I was in the library, reading Wilkie Collins until the scream." A footman corroborated, recalling he brought her tea at 11. Dr. Harlan Graves, his spectacles fogging slightly, fidgeted as he spoke. "I've known Eldric since Eton. He was my friend, though I owed him money. A bad investment. I was in the conservatory, tending to some herbs when the scream came." A gardener confirmed seeing him there briefly, but Harlan's trembling hands and pallor suggested more than mere grief. Silas Blackwood, his scar stark in the firelight, met Poirot's gaze with defiance. "Eldric and I were business partners, nothing more. He accused me of embezzlement, lies to seize my share of the firm. I was on the telephone in the hall speaking to my solicitor until just before midnight." The operator's logs later checked verified a call at 11:15. Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Each of you has a motive, no? The Baron, he was not a man without enemies. But the method, this locked room, it fascinates Poirot." He returned to the study, Hastings and Japp trailing. He examined the lock, noting the key on the floor. "The key, it was inside, oui? Yet the spare did not work. Why?" Japp shrugged. "Jammed, perhaps, or a trick." Poirot knelt, inspecting the keyhole. No scratches, no forced entry before the crowbar. The window, latched, no marks. Yet the Baron is dead. His gaze fell on a scrap of fabric caught on the windowsill, a torn piece of tweed matching Reginald's jacket. "Explain this, Monsieur Reginald," he said, holding it up. Reginald flushed. "I was in the study earlier, arguing with Father. It must have torn then." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone neutral. He pocketed the fabric, his mind already turning. A glass of port on the desk caught his eye, untouched, but with a faint residue at the rim. October 15th, 1927. Wore on at Eldric Manor. The relentless storm outside mirroring the tempest of suspicion within. The grand estate, with its ivy-clad towers and somber portraits, seemed to pulse with secrets, each creak of the floorboards a whisper of guilt. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit unruffled despite the chaos, stood in the study where Baron Eldric Hawthorne had met his end, his green eyes scanning the room with the precision of a watchmaker. The locked room murder, stabbed with his own dagger, in a chamber sealed from within, remained an enigma. But Poirot's little gray cells were alight with possibility. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his notepad filled with scribbled observations, while Inspector Japp coordinated with the Manor's staff, who were still shaken by the night's events. The local constable had yet to arrive, delayed by flooded roads, leaving Poirot to unravel the puzzle with only the suspects and servants as witnesses. The blood-stained Pact document, the Baron's will, lay on the desk, its terms fueling motives. Eliza Thorne's generous trust fund, Reginald Hawthorne's near disinheritance, Lady Victoria's conditional stipend, Dr. Harlan Graves's forgiven debts, and Silas Blackwood's demanded repayment. Poirot turned his attention to the room's details, his gloved hands tracing the edges of the desk. The dagger, one of the Baron's collection, bore no fingerprints but his own, a curious detail. The glass of port, its rim faintly clouded, intrigued him further. "Hastings," he said, "the glass. It was tested, oui? But perhaps not thoroughly." He requested Japp send it for chemical analysis when the constable arrived, suspecting more than mere port. The torn scrap of tweed from Reginald's jacket found on the windowsill was another thread. Reginald's explanation, that it tore during an earlier argument, held for now, but Poirot's raised eyebrow suggested skepticism. He moved to the window, its latch secure, and noted the absence of mud or marks on the sill. Their import firm, with ledgers as proof. A third hinted at Dr. Graves's opium addiction, funded by the Baron to keep him compliant. Eliza's letters were absent, but a note mentioned her parents' boating accident, suggesting the Baron's involvement. Reginald's file contained only a single line, "Unworthy heir." Victoria flushed at the revelation of her affair. "It was a moment of weakness," she said, her voice brittle. "Eldric knew and used it to control me." Her alibi, pacing in her room, wavered as a maid admitted she hadn't seen her after 11. Silas, his scar twitching, denied the embezzlement. "Those ledgers are forged," he growled. "Eldric wanted my share of the firm." His telephone call alibi held, but the maid's report of his muttered threat, "He'll pay for this," cast a shadow. Dr. Graves, sweating profusely, admitted his addiction. "Eldric supplied me to keep me in his debt," he stammered. His conservatory alibi was shaky. The gardener saw him briefly but not continuously. Eliza, her composure intact, dismissed the boating accident rumor. "Uncle was cruel, but not a murderer. I was reading in here." Her knowledge of toxicology gleaned from books raised Poirot's interest when he noticed a library copy of poisons and their properties bookmarked at a page on strychnine. Reginald, defensive about the tweed scrap, insisted, "I wasn't in the study after dinner." But a footman recalled seeing him near the staircase at 11:30, contradicting his billiard room claim. Poirot's attention shifted to a new clue. A set of muddy footprints outside the study window, discovered by a groundskeeper in a brief lull in the storm. The prints matched Dr. Graves's shoes, size 9, with a distinctive worn heel. I walked the grounds earlier, Graves protested, before the rain worsened. Poirot noted the prints were fresh, the mud still damp despite the downpour. Another discovery complicated matters, a vial by Eldric and Silas years ago. The others, Jenkins hinted, were entangled either as accomplices or victims of blackmail. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The Pact, it is a chain that binds them all. But who broke it with murder? He paced the library, his mind weaving connections. The laudanum vial suggested Graves, but its placement felt staged. The footprints pointed to Graves too, yet their freshness in the storm was odd. The tweed scrap implicated Reginald, but its convenience was suspect. Victoria's affair and Silas's embezzlement offered motives, but their alibis held. Barely. Eliza's toxicology knowledge was a shadow over her calm demeanor. Hastings, ever eager, suggested a mechanical trick. What if the dagger was rigged to strike later? A spring or timer? Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami. The wound was fresh, the blood warm. The killer was present, yet invisible. Poirot returned to the study, examining the lock again. The key found on the floor showed no signs of tampering, but a faint scratch inside the keyhole caught his eye. Curieux, he muttered. A tool, perhaps? But how used? He inspected the window latch, finding a tiny nick on its edge, as if something thin, a wire perhaps, had brushed against it. The servants' quarters yielded another clue, a torn page from a medical journal found in a waste bin discussing delayed action poisons. It was unmarked, but its presence pointed to Graves or someone framing him. Poirot tucked it away, his mind racing. As noon approached, Poirot gathered the guests again. The clues, they are like threads in a tapestry, he said. Some are true, some are woven to deceive. But Poirot, he sees the pattern forming. He dismissed them, noting their reactions. Victoria's trembling hands, Reginald's clenched jaw, Eliza's calculating gaze, Graves's nervous tick, Silas's defiant stare. Outside, the storm intensified, trapping all within the manor's walls. Poirot turned to Jap. Send the glass and vial to London when the scrap implicating Reginald. Muddy footprints pointing to Dr. Graves. A suspicious laudanum vial. And letters revealing motives of betrayal, debt, and forbidden love. In the library, where heavy curtains muted the storm's roar, Poirot gathered his thoughts, Captain Hastings at his side scribbling furiously in his notepad. Inspector Japp, his patience fraying, coordinated with the butler, Mr. Jenkins, to secure the manor until the local constable could navigate the flooded roads. The suspects, Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Eliza Thorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood, remained under scrutiny, their alibis and motives tangled in a web of deceit. Poirot's sharp eyes returned to the study, where the crime scene remained undisturbed save for the sheet covering the Baron's body. The dagger, its handle engraved with the Hawthorne serpent crest, lay on the desk, a silent witness to the violence. The glass of port, with its faint bitter scent, had been sent for analysis, though Poirot suspected it was a red herring, a distraction from the true method. The nick on the window latch and the scratch in the keyhole gnawed at him, hinting at a mechanical trick yet to be unraveled. As the clock struck 2, a sudden commotion broke the manor's uneasy silence. A second scream, this time from the kitchens, sent the guests and servants rushing downstairs. Poirot, Hastings, and Japp arrived to find a scullery maid, her apron askew, pointing to a broken window in the pantry. "It was a man," she stammered. "I saw him in the rain, lurking by the stables." The window's jagged edges suggested a hasty exit, but the storm had washed away any footprints. Japp organized a search of the grounds, but Poirot's raised hand halted them. "No, Inspector. This is a distraction. The killer is still among us." The scream proved a false alarm, caused by a stray cat knocking over a crate, but it led to a startling discovery. In the stables, hidden behind a stack of hay, Japp found Charles Langley, the young artist linked to Lady Victoria's affair. Langley, afterward, hearing the scream at midnight, her trembling hands betrayed her nerves. Another complication arose when a groom, emboldened by the chaos, approached Poirot privately. "I saw Mr. Reginald near the study at 11:30, he whispered. "He was carrying a small bundle. Looked like papers." Reginald, when questioned, denied it, his face reddening. "The groom's mistaken. I was in the billiard room." But the cigar stub, his earlier proof, was now less convincing, as no one could confirm his presence there continuously. Eliza, her gray eyes sharp, drew Poirot's attention next. A search of her room, authorized by Japp, uncovered a forged draft of the Baron's will, hidden in a hollowed-out book. The document, in Eliza's meticulous handwriting, increased her inheritance tenfold. "I was desperate," she confessed, her voice steady but low. "Uncle controlled my future. I wrote it as a fantasy, nothing more." Poirot noted the ink matched the Pact's signatures, raising questions about her intentions. Dr. Graves faced further scrutiny when a servant found a medical syringe in the conservatory, half hidden among the ferns. It was empty, but its presence suggested a method beyond the dagger. Graves, his spectacles slipping, protested. "I've never seen it. Someone's framing me." His opium addiction, already exposed, made the syringe a damning clue, though Poirot suspected it was too convenient. Silas Blackwood produced a telegram, discovered in his luggage, that deepened the mystery. Dated the day before, it was from the Baron's solicitor, warning that Eldric planned to expose Silas's role in their smuggling ring to the authorities. "He was setting me up," Silas growled, his scar livid. "But I didn't kill him." His telephone alibi held, but the telegram suggested a motive stronger than embezzlement. Poirot gathered the suspects in the drawing room, the fire's glow casting their shadows like specters on the walls. "The web tightens," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "Each of you has a secret, a reason to wish the Baron dead. But the method, the locked room, it remains the key unclear. But its presence hinted at a mechanical solution, perhaps pulled through the keyhole or vent." The storm's intensity trapped the suspects, heightening their unease. A maid reported hearing a faint click from the study before the scream, suggesting a timed device. Another servant found a torn glove in the garden, its leather matching Silas's attire, though he claimed to have lost it days ago. Each clue seemed to point in multiple directions, muddying the truth. Poirot's mind raced. The syringe, the wire, the forged will, the telegram, all suggested a killer with both cunning and desperation. The footprints in laudanum vial felt planted, designed to mislead. Eliza's toxicology knowledge, Reginald's proximity, Victoria's lover, Graves' addiction, Silas's betrayal. Motives abounded, but the method eluded him. As evening approached, Poirot addressed the group. "The killer is clever, but Poirot is more so. The clues, they are like stars in the night sky, scattered but forming a constellation. I am close to seeing it." His eyes lingered on each suspect, noting Victoria's clenched fists, Reginald's nervous fidgeting, Eliza's calm facade, Graves' trembling hands, and Silas's steely glare. Hastings, ever optimistic, whispered, "Got a theory, Poirot?" The detective's lips curved. "Many, mon ami, but only one will fit the lock." He instructed Japp to guard the suspects closely and sent the wire, syringe, and glove for analysis, though the storm delayed their transport. The manor's atmosphere grew suffocating, each suspect a prisoner of their own secrets. Poirot retired to the library, poring over the Pact document. Its terms hinted at a deeper crime, a smuggling ring that bound the Baron and Silas, with others complicit or blackmailed. "The Pact," Poirot murmured. "It is the heart of this murder. But whose heart broke it?" Outside, lightning illuminated the manor's towers, casting eerie shadow. Towering bookshelf, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, hovered nearby, his notepad brimming with theories, while Inspector Japp coordinated with the manor's staff, who were fraying under the strain of suspicion. The suspects, Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Eliza Thorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood, remained confined to the manor, their alibis crumbling under scrutiny, their motives laid bare by the Baron's damning letters. Poirot's mind returned to the Pact, the document that bound the suspects in a web of obligation and blackmail. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, had revealed its deeper significance. A vow not only to abide by the Baron's will but to conceal a smuggling ring from years past, involving artifacts plundered from the Orient. This revelation cast the murder in a new light, suggesting a motive rooted not just in inheritance, but in the fear of exposure. "The past," Poirot murmured to Hastings. "It is the key to the present. We must dig deeper." He began with the study, revisiting the crime scene with fresh eyes. The dagger, its serpent-etched handle a grim signature, had been plunged into the Baron's heart at an angle impossible for suicide, a fact Dr. Graves had confirmed. Poirot crouched by the desk, examining the keyhole's faint scratch and the window latch's nick. The thin wire, found in the corridor chandelier, intrigued him most. "This wire," he said, holding it to the light. "It is strong, yet subtle. A tool for a clever mind." He hypothesized it had been threaded through the keyhole or a vent, perhaps to manipulate the lock after the killer's exit. But the exact method eluded him. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the manor's elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Clara, who approached Poirot with trembling hands. "I wasn't sure if it mattered, sir," she whispered, "but I found this in the attic, hidden in a trunk." She produced a faded journal, its pages yellowed, belonging to the Baron's late father, Sir Reginald Hawthorne. Included locked room mysteries. "Mademoiselle," he said, "the fabric. It was found too conveniently. Did you place it to mislead?" Eliza's gray eyes widened, but she shook her head. "I wouldn't frame Reginald. I only wanted my freedom." Yet her hesitation suggested more, and Poirot noted a faint ink stain on her fingers, matching the forged will. A new clue surfaced when Japp's search of the grounds uncovered a hidden vent beneath the study window, obscured by ivy. The vent, just wide enough for a wire or string, led to the cellar, where a dusty coil of fishing line was found, similar to the chandelier wire. Poirot's eyes gleamed. This vent, it is the secret passage, not of stone, but of cunning. The killer used it to lock the door from outside. The fishing line, when tested, could support enough tension to turn the key remotely, confirming a mechanical trick. But the method still puzzled him. The dagger's angle suggested a direct strike, not a rigged device, and the blood's warmth meant the killer was present at midnight. The laudanum vial, the syringe, and the port glass hinted at poison, yet the wound was fatal. Poirot requested a rush analysis of the glass and vial, though the storm delayed transport. "The poison, it is a shadow," he told Hastings. "Perhaps it masks the true method." Another twist emerged when a footman, emboldened by Mrs. Clara's candor, admitted overhearing a heated argument between the Baron and Dr. Graves the previous week. "He threatened to expose my addiction," Graves confessed when confronted. "He said he'd ruin me unless I signed the pact." The syringe, he insisted, was planted, but Poirot noted his medical expertise could devise a delayed poison, though the dagger contradicted this. Silas Blackwood's telegram, warning of the Baron's intent to expose him, took on new weight with the journal's revelations. Eldric was no saint, Silas admitted. "We smuggled together years ago, but I wanted out. He used it to trap me." His scar, Poirot learned, was from a duel with the Baron in their youth, a grudge that simmered minutes. The port glass's bitter scent aligned, but without analysis it was speculative. Poirot suspected a dual method: poison to weaken, dagger to mislead. As night fell, Poirot gathered the suspects in the drawing room, the fire casting their faces in stark relief. "The past echoes in this murder," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "The pact was not just a will, but a chain to a crime long buried. One of you broke it with blood. The wire, the vent, they reveal the method. But the heart of the killer, it is still hidden." The suspects shifted uneasily. Victoria's hands twisted her handkerchief, Reginald's jaw clenched. Eliza's gaze was steady but guarded. Graves' spectacles slipped. Silas's scar twitched. Poirot's eyes lingered on each, sensing the truth was close. "The little gray cells. They see the pattern forming," he said. "Tomorrow, we shall unravel it." Hastings, whispering, asked, "Got a suspect, Poirot?" The detective's lips curved. "Several, mon ami. But the truth, it is singular." He instructed Japp to secure the vent and guard the suspects, who were growing restless as the storm trapped them. The manor's halls grew silent, save for the storm's roar. Poirot retired to the library, the journal in hand, its pages whispering of oaths and betrayals. The smuggling ring, the blood oath, the locked room. They were pieces of a puzzle nearing completion. "The killer," Poirot murmured. "They thought to outwit Poirot. But no one outwits the little gray cells." Chapter 7. The Unraveling Thread. The night of October 15th, 1927 enveloped Eldric Manor in a darkness as thick as the secrets it harbored. The storm outside raged on, its howling winds and lashing rain a fitting backdrop to the mounting tension within. The murder of Baron Eldric Hawthorne, stabbed in his locked study with no apparent means of entry, remained an enigma, but Hercule Poirot's little gray cells were closing in on the truth. The clues, a blood-stained pact, a tweed scrap, muddy footprints, and the whole design unravels. The Baron's death, it is no mere act of passion. It is calculated, bound to the pact you all signed. The locked room, it speaks of cunning. Tonight, Poirot draws closer to the killer. He began with the journal, discovered by the housekeeper, Mrs. Clara, which revealed the Baron's role in a smuggling ring alongside his father and a young Silas Blackwood. The blood oath of 1895, sworn to protect their illicit trade, had been revived by Eldric as the fatal pact, a tool to blackmail his circle. "The pact," Poirot said, holding up the bloodied document. "It was not just a will. It bound you to silence about a crime, a smuggling ring, perhaps a murder. One of you broke this oath with blood." The suspects shifted uneasily. Poirot turned to the method, the locked room's mystery. The wire and fishing line, found in the chandelier and cellar vent, suggested a mechanical trick to lock the door from outside. "The killer," he explained, "entered the study, struck the Baron, and used the wire through the vent to turn the key, creating the illusion of a sealed chamber." The nick on the window latch and the keyhole's scratch supported this, but the dagger's direct strike, confirmed by Dr. Graves as instantaneous, meant the killer was present at midnight. A new revelation deepened the puzzle. Japp's search of the manor's attic, prompted by the journal, uncovered a hidden box containing a photograph of the Baron, Silas, and an unknown man in a Calcutta warehouse, dated 1895. The man, identified by Mrs. Clara as Victor Thorne, Eliza's late father, was tied to the smuggling ring. "The boating accident," Poirot said, turning to Eliza. "Was it truly an accident? Or did the Baron ensure silence?" Eliza's face paled, but she shook her head. "I was a child. I know nothing of it." Yet her knowledge of poisons, particularly aconite, lingered in Poirot's mind. The tweed scrap, once pointing to Reginald, was dismissed as a plant. Poirot confronted Eliza again. "Mademoiselle, the fabric was from Reginald's jacket, yet fishing line was found." "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot said, "your scar, it is from a duel with the Baron, no? Old grudges die hard." Silas's eyes narrowed. "He betrayed me first, but I didn't need a dagger to settle scores." His alibi, the telephone call, held firm, but his knowledge of the manor's layout was damning. Victoria's affair with Charles Langley complicated her alibi further. A maid admitted seeing her slip out to the gardens at 11:15, not returning until just before the scream. "I was saying goodbye to Charles," Victoria confessed, tears brimming. "Eldric's threats were unbearable." Poirot noted her access to the study's key during her years as mistress of the manor. Reginald's notebook, detailing his debts, revealed a desperate plan to steal the will. "I was drunk, foolish," he admitted, "but I didn't go through with it." The groom's sighting near the study at 11:30 suggested otherwise, though no bundle was found. A critical clue emerged from the butler, Mr. Jenkins, who recalled a detail overlooked. The Baron's pocket watch, found on the study floor, was stopped at 11:50, 10 minutes before the scream. "The watch," Poirot said. "It tells us the time of the struggle. The killer was there. But how did they leave?" The watch's crystal was cracked, suggesting it was dropped or struck, perhaps during a confrontation. Poirot's theory solidified. The killer entered the study, poisoned the Baron with a small dose of aconite to weaken him, then stabbed him with the dagger. The wire, threaded through the vent, locked the door as they exited via the corridor, leaving the key inside. The scream, Poirot suspected, was delayed, a trick, perhaps a gramophone or a servant coerced to cry out, masking the true time of death. He confronted the suspects with this. "The aconite, it was in the pot, oui? A subtle touch but not fatal." The dagger was the true stroke. Who among you had the skill for both? Grave, free. The gramophone, the wire, the poison. They point to a mind both cunning and desperate. Tomorrow, Poirot will name the guilty. The suspect's reactions were telling. Victoria's gasp, Reginald's scowl, Eliza's steady gaze, Graves's nervous twitch, Silas's clenched fist. Hastings whispered, "You've got them rattled, Poirot." The detective nodded. "The truth, it is close, mon ami. But the killer, they are closer still." Jap tightened security, stationing men at the manor's exits. The storm raged on, its lightning illuminating the suspects' faces, each a mask hiding guilt or fear. Poirot retired to the study, the journal and Pact in hand, his mind piecing together the final threads. "The past," he murmured. "It echoes in the present. The killer thought to outwit Poirot, but the little gray cells, they do not fail." Chapter 8. The Hidden Hand. The night of October 15th, 1927 pressed heavily on Eldric Manor. The storm outside, a relentless chorus of wind and rain that seemed to amplify the tension within. The murder of Baron Eldric Hawthorne, stabbed in his locked study with no apparent means of entry, remained a riddle. But Hercule Poirot's little gray cells were weaving the threads of evidence into a clearer picture. The clues, a blood-stained pact, a tweed scrap, muddy footprints, a laudanum vial, a forged will, a wire, a syringe, a gramophone, and a journal from the Baron's past, pointed to a killer among the manor's trapped inhabitants, their motives tied to a smuggling ring and a fatal oath. Poirot stood in the grand drawing room, its fire casting long shadows across the faces of the suspects. Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Eliza Thorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood. The air was thick with unease, each suspect's gaze flickering between fear and defiance. Captain Hastings, his notepad nearly full, stood by Poirot's side, while Inspector Japp, his patience worn thin by the storm's delays, ensured the manor remained sealed. New discovery deepened the mystery. Japp's men, searching the manor's cellars, found a hidden trap door beneath a stack of crates, leading to a narrow passage that ended near the study's vent. The passage, though too small for a person, could conceal tools or wires. Dust on the trapdoor suggested recent use, and a faint oil residue matched the fishing line's coating. "This passage," Poirot said. "It is the killer's secret path, not for entry, but for the trick." The gramophone found in the attic was another key. Its worn needle and scream record confirmed the delayed cry. Poirot questioned the servants, and a young maid, trembling, admitted seeing Eliza in the attic days before. Looking at old records, Eliza's eyes narrowed. "I was researching family history," she insisted. "I found the gramophone by chance." Her literary knowledge, including locked-room mysteries, made her a suspect for orchestrating such a deception. The aconite in the port glass, confirmed by a rushed analysis smuggled through the storm, was a subtle dose, not fatal, but enough to disorient. "The poison," Poirot mused. "It weakens the Baron, making the dagger's strike easier. But why both?" The syringe found in the conservatory bore no fingerprints, suggesting it was planted to frame Dr. Graves. He protested, his voice cracking. "I'm no murderer. My addiction is my shame, but not this." His medical expertise, however, kept him in Poirot's sights. Silas Blackwood's past with the Baron, revealed by the journal, took on new weight. The scar on his cheek from a duel in 1895 stemmed from a dispute over smuggling profits. Eldric betrayed me then, Silas admitted, and he tried again with that telegram. His knowledge of the manor's layout, including the cellar, suggested he could rig the wire trick, but his telephone alibi held firm. Victoria's alibi, weakened by her meeting with Charles Langley, crumbled further when a footman recalled Pact. If any signatory betrayed it, the others could demand their death, even by their own hand. "The Baron," Poirot said. "He revived this clause to control you. Did one of you invoke it?" The suspects' faces paled, and Silas's fist clenched, betraying a flicker of guilt. Poirot's attention turned to the dagger's angle, confirmed by a coroner's report Japp received via a messenger braving the storm. The blade entered from above, suggesting a taller assailant or a raised arm, ruling out Victoria, who was petite, but implicating Silas or Reginald. The lack of fingerprints suggested gloves, and the torn glove in the garden, matching Silas's attire, was re-examined. "I lost it weeks ago," Silas insisted, but Poirot noted its fresh tear. A servant's memory added another layer. The butler recalled the Baron installing a hidden panel in the study's desk, used to store sensitive documents. Poirot opened it, finding a letter addressed to Scotland Yard, detailing Silas's smuggling role and implicating Victor Thorne, Eliza's father. "The Baron," Poirot said. "He planned to expose the past, breaking the Pact. This was the spark." The suspects were summoned again, their nerves frayed. Poirot paced before them, his voice rising. "The hidden hand is cunning. The aconite, the wire, the gramophone. They are tools of a mind that planned for months, perhaps years. The pact was the motive, the smuggling its root. One of you struck to silence the Baron before he could speak." Victoria gasped. Reginald scowled. Eliza remained composed. Graves trembled, and Silas's scar twitched. Poirot's gaze lingered on Eliza. "Mademoiselle, your knowledge of locks and poisons is remarkable. Did you seek revenge for your parents?" Eliza's voice was steady. "I hated him, yes, but I didn't kill him." Graves, pushed to breaking, admitted, "Eldric supplied my opium to keep me docile. I wanted out, but not like this." His syringe, Poirot suspected, was a plant hawthorn, stabbed in his locked study with no apparent means of entry, had gripped the estate in a vice of suspicion and fear. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit and waxed mustache defying the chaos, stood poised to unravel the mystery. The clues: a blood-stained pact, a tweed scrap, muddy footprints, a laudanum vial, a forged will, a wire, a syringe, a gramophone, a hidden journal, and a secret passage had woven a complex tapestry. But Poirot's little gray cells were ready to reveal the killer's identity. In the grand drawing room where the fire cast a warm but uneasy glow, Poirot assembled the suspects. Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Eliza Thorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood. Their faces, etched with exhaustion and dread, betrayed the strain of a night under scrutiny. Captain Hastings, his notepad brimming with notes, stood by Poirot's side, while Inspector Japp, his patience stretched thin by the storm's delays, ensured the manor remained secure. The local constable had finally arrived, his motor car battling through the flooded roads, ready to act on Poirot's revelations. Poirot stood before the group, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice slow and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, the hour of truth has come. The murder of Baron Eldric was no act of impulse. It was a masterpiece of cunning, designed to deceive. The locked room, the pact, the clues, they all point to one among you. Poirot, he sees the pattern, and now he names the guilty." He began with the pact, the blood-signed document that bound the suspects to a smuggling ring from 1895, revived by the Baron to blackmail his circle. The journal, found in the attic, revealed its origins. Eldric, his father Silas, and Victor Thorne, Eliza's father, had sworn a blood oath to protect their illicit trade, which included a rival's death in a suspicious fire. "The Baron," Poirot said, holding up Victoria's affair with Charles Langley, exposed by the Baron's letters, gave her reason to fear disinheritance. Her shaky alibi, meeting Langley at 11, placed her near the study. Reginald's near disinheritance and debts, coupled with his presence near the study at 11:30, made him a suspect. Though his drunken state suggested clumsiness, Silas's smuggling past and the Baron's threat to expose him, confirmed by the telegram and journal, fueled his motive, and his knowledge of the manor's layout suited the wire trick. Eliza's forged will and toxicology expertise, tied to her parents' suspicious death, hinted at revenge. Graves, blackmailed over his addiction, had the medical skill for poison, but lacked the precision for the dagger's strike. A critical clue sealed the case: the hidden panel in the Baron's desk, containing a letter to Scotland Yard naming Silas and Victor Thorne. Poirot's re-examination of the journal revealed a final note. Victor's death in the boating accident was orchestrated by Eldric to eliminate a rival, confirmed by a coded entry deciphered by Poirot's keen eye. "This," he said, "is the heart of the motive." Poirot faced the suspects, his gaze piercing. "The killer is Mademoiselle Eliza Thorne." The room gasped. Eliza's gray eyes widened, but she remained silent. Poirot explained. "Mademoiselle, you learned of your father's murder through the journal, found weeks ago in the attic while researching. You planned revenge, using your knowledge of poisons and locks. The aconite in the port weakened the Baron, making him vulnerable. You entered the study at 11:45, stabbed him with his own dagger, a symbol of his betrayal. The wire, threaded through the vent, locked the door as you exited. The gramophone set to play the scream at midnight gave you time to return to the library, feigning innocence." He continued. "The tweed scrap you planted to frame Reginald. The syringe and laudanum you placed to point to Graves' addiction, Silas's smuggling. All were motives, but none matched the precision of Eliza's revenge. The tweed scrap, footprints, and syringe were her red herrings, designed to scatter suspicion." Poirot addressed the room. "The pact was the Baron's weapon, but it became his undoing. The past, it catches us all. Justice, it is served, though the heart, it aches for the tragedy." He turned to Hastings. "Mon ami, the locked room is no match for Poirot." As Eliza was led away, the manor's tension eased, though the storm still raged. Poirot's denouement had cut through the deception, revealing a killer driven by a wound decades old. The clues, once scattered, now formed a clear constellation, and the little gray cells had triumphed. Chapter 10. Dawn of Resolution. The morning of October 16, 1927, brought a fragile calm to Eldric Manor. The storm that had battered the Sussex countryside finally relenting. The gray clouds parted, casting slivers of sunlight across the estate's ivy-clad towers, as if nature itself acknowledged the unveiling of truth. The murder of Baron Eldric Hawthorne, stabbed in his locked study by his niece Eliza Thorne, had been solved by Hercule Poirot, his little gray cells piercing the veil of deception. The manor, though still heavy with the weight of secrets, began to breathe again, its inhabitants grappling with the aftermath of betrayal, revenge, and justice. In the grand drawing room, where the fire now burned low, the remaining suspects, Lady Victoria Hawthorne, Reginald Hawthorne, Dr. Harlan Graves, and Silas Blackwood, gathered one final time. Their faces, etched with exhaustion and relief, bore the marks of a night that had tested their souls. Captain Hastings stood by the window, his notepad closed, his eyes reflecting the dawn's light. Inspector Japp, his duty nearly done, coordinated with the newly arrived local constable, who had taken Eliza into custody. Poirot, his suit as impeccable as ever, stood at the center, his mustache twitching with quiet satisfaction. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice soft yet vent. Locked the door from outside, while the gramophone's recorded scream delayed discovery, securing her alibi in the library. The tweed scrap, syringe, and laudanum vial were planted to frame Reginald and Graves, her red herrings designed to scatter suspicion. Poirot held up the blood-stained pact, its serpent crest gleaming in the firelight. "This document," he said, "was the Baron's weapon, binding you to a smuggling ring and its sins. Eliza broke it with blood, but the cost was her freedom." He turned to the suspects, his green eyes piercing. "Each of you carried motives: love, debt, greed, betrayal. But only one struck. The rest, you are free, though not unscarred." Lady Victoria, her auburn hair loosened from its chignon, spoke first, her voice trembling. "I hated Eldric for his control, but I never wished this." Her affair with Charles Langley, now exposed, would force her to rebuild her life. But the Baron's will, adjusted by his solicitor, granted her a fair portion of the estate, freeing her from the threat of poverty. Reginald, his tie still askew, ran a hand through his hair. "I was a fool, but not a murderer. Father pushed me too far. The will, though cutting him out initially, was voided by the Baron's death before midnight, restoring his inheritance under an older draft. Poirot advised him to seek discipline, a lesson Reginald nodded to, chastened. Dr. Graves, his spectacles fogged with emotion, admitted his shame. "My addiction was my prison, but I'll seek help. The Baron's forgiveness of his debts, part of the pact, held, allowing him to start anew." Poirot's gentle nod conveyed understanding, though he warned Graves to avoid further temptation. Silas Blackwood, his scar stark in the morning light, clenched his fist. "Eldric betrayed me, but I fought him with words, not daggers." The letter to Scotland Yard, naming him in the smuggling ring, was destroyed by Poirot's discretion, sparing Silas prosecution. His partnership in the firm would continue. "Don't regret it. He took my family." Poirot nodded gravely. "The heart seeks justice, mademoiselle, but the law, it demands its due. Your mind, it is brilliant, but it chose a dark path. Eliza offered no further words, her confession complete. The manor began to stir with life again. The servants resumed their duties, cleaning the study and repairing the splintered door. The suspects, freed from suspicion, prepared to depart, their futures uncertain but unburdened by the Pact's weight. Victoria planned to sell her share of the estate and move to Paris with Langley. Reginald vowed to reform, eyeing a business venture to prove himself. Graves sought treatment in London, and Silas returned to his firm determined to clear his name. Poirot, Hastings, and Japp stood on the manor steps as the constable's car drove away, Eliza's silhouette fading into the mist. The dawn's light bathed the estate, its towers gleaming with a promise of renewal. Hastings, ever sentimental, sighed. "A tragic case, Poirot. So much pain from the past." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, adjusting his Homburg hat. "The past, it is a chain, but the truth, it breaks it. The little gray cells, they have done their work." He glanced at the manor, its serpent crest above the door a reminder of broken oaths. Now, Poirot requires a holiday. The fishing, it awaits. Japp chuckled. "You've earned it, old chap. But knowing you, another mystery's just around the corner." Poirot's mustache twitched with a smile. "Perhaps, Inspector. But for now, the manor is at peace." As they climbed into their motor car, the estate receded into the distance, its secrets laid bare. The fatal pact, born of greed and betrayal, had claimed its final victim. But justice, as Poirot promised, had prevailed. The Sussex hills, bathed in sunlight, seemed to sigh in relief, their silence a testament to the end of a dark chapter.